Happy New Year and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. It's afternoon, so I've already broken most of my New Year's resolutions, but maybe some of them will survive till tomorrow. Very happy to be here. But thank you for starting the year with us. It's a Marian feast day today. It's the feast of Mary, the Mother of God, and it's the highest form of feast. It's a solemnity, so we go to Mass today. And we thought, well, you know what? Let's make it a Marian show. So Marian Apparitions, there's a good topic. And then we've got Jimmy Akin, who is the investigator of mysteries. As a matter of fact, thousands and thousands of people just love to listen to Jimmy investigate mysteries. So we thought, let's ask Jimmy Akin, what are the most credible and maybe some of the most incredible Marian apparitions. So I think we're gonna get a ranking today of from not so credible to pretty darn credible. That's my category. I made that up. Pretty darn credible. Jimmy Akin is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of a whole bunch of books. As I said, the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World and the Jimmy Akin podcast. Happy New Year, Jimmy.
Happy New Year, Salette. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I would say maybe 20 or 30% of my New Year's resolutions are still viable. They're still open. So
good.
that's pretty
By the way, I thought I'd mention something just as a point of clarification. You said today is the highest form of Holy Day, being that it's solemnity and we go to Mass. If those are treated as two independent statements, okay, You got some truth there. But it's true that all holy days of obligation are solemnities, but not all solemnities are holy days of obligation.
Oh.
There are solemnities like, for example, the Immaculate Conception on December 8th, which is a solemnity, but it's not a holy day of obligation, so we don't have to go to Mass on that day.
Jimmy, all right. I had no idea, but I appreciate that. All right, so you're the mystery investigator. You actually done a lot of it,
as well as the legal nitpicker. Yeah.
Clarifier. So you've done tons and tons of, I don't know, what we might call natural mysteries and some supernatural mysteries. Mm-hmm. And among them, I think some of the best mysteries we've got are these Marian apparitions, because you got a basic question to answer. Is it supernatural or is it not supernatural? And then it comes with a whole other set of questions. Like a lot of times, even supernatural events, the person who transmits it, makes some stuff up or gets it wrong. So you got to kind of work your way to what actually happened, and is it supernatural? It makes for a pretty good mystery.
Yeah, and I've investigated bunches of mysteries, natural, paranormal, and supernatural, and many of them have concerned Marian apparitions, and I've got a bunch of episodes of Mysterious World where I look at those. So they initially asked me, could you give us for January 1st, like the top 5 Marian apparitions in terms of evidence? And It's like, whoa, there have been over 5,000, Marian apparitions reported in history. I have not studied them all.
Come on, Jimmy. It's only 5,000.
Give me time. Yeah. But, I don't have firm opinions on things I haven't investigated. So I said, instead, let's do a ranking.
Okay.
Of Marian apparitions, from those with extremely low credibility to those with extremely high credibility.
And I guess I would like to know about the categories that are used in kind of classifying. Like if you say 5,000 apparitions, I would assume the church maybe treats an apparition that was reported, I don't know, 1,500 years ago differently than it might treat one that just reported this week. What are the categories that are used for these things?
Yeah, well, so most of the 5,000 or so apparitions that have been reported in church history are unclassified. They have not been ruled upon by church authority. But for many years, there has been a tendency on the part of the magisterium when it rules on an apparition, and we're talking just a few dozen here, that have ever received an official ruling. But it's tended to sort them into three categories. Those, and I'll use the Latin terms, but I'll also translate them.
Okay.
The top category is constat de supernaturalitate, which basically means established as of supernatural origin.
Oh.
Then and supernatural means coming from God in this context. If it's demons, it's not supernatural, not in the sense that the term is being used here.
Yeah.
Then in the middle, there is non-constat de supernaturalitate, which means it's not established as supernatural. And then at the bottom, there is constat de non-supernaturalitate, which means established as non-supernatural. This did not come from God. So those are the historic classifications that were in use up to about 2024. And in 2024, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith published a new set of norms for evaluating supernatural phenomena. And they basically, even though they really only called attention to 6 of them, they basically established 7 categories. At the top is still constat de supernaturalitate. This is established as supernatural. At the bottom is constat de non-supernaturalitate, or established as not supernatural. And then in the middle, there are a group of categories that express different levels of not confidence that it's supernatural, but different levels of, is it safe for people to have a devotion to this apparition. The top one being nihil obstat, which actually kind of was envisioned under the old system, but it was de-emphasized. Nihil obstat is Latin for nothing obstructs. So there wouldn't be anything obstructing the faithful from having a devotion to this apparition, and there's nothing obstructing the bishop from promoting the apparition and things like that. But that's only one of these middle categories that's in use today. What we're going to be doing on today's episode of Catholic Answers Live, I'm going to be kind of using a modified, I'm not going to strictly be using either one of these systems. There are some apparitions that we'll cover that I think are not supernatural. And then there are ones that it's debatable whether it's supernatural, but there's evidence favoring that. And then there are ones where I think at the top there's really clear evidence that this is supernatural. So that's I'm looking at these not in terms of the modern categories, which focus on how helpful is the apparition and how safe is it to have a devotion to it. I'm still more looking at the question of, is this likely supernatural or not? But I have a slightly different way of looking at it. At the bottom, no, it's clearly not supernatural. In the middle, well, there's some evidence that could point in both directions, but the evidence, there's certainly, I don't see a problem asserting that it's supernatural. And then there are those that are definitely, this is supernatural.
All right. So, is there that revision? As I recall, I just want to ask you about this one thing. If that revision, as I recall, also kind of sped up the process, maybe, so that
yes. So that was one of the reasons they went to the new system, because it can be really hard to establish that something is supernatural, and it was one of a few factors that was really slowing down the process. That's why there have been like a few dozen of these that have been like 24 is being generous, that have received official church rulings prior to the new norms. And then just since they introduced the new norms in 2024, there's been like a dozen that they've made rulings on, because this really sped up the process when they defocused the question of, is it supernatural or not? They can still do an investigation on that question, but it's the Pope has to intervene to say, we want to look at that question specifically. Unless the Pope intervenes, and thus far no Pope has done this since the new criteria were introduced, but unless the Pope says we want to look at that question, we're not examining the question, is it supernatural? We're looking at, is it okay for people to have a devotion to this?
Mm-hmm. So so you don't have to quite be anxious so much about we're declaring something supernatural, therefore we better get this right. You can have a little, so that can make the process a little bit quicker, in other words.
A lot quicker, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And in practice, has it actually worked?
That's what I just said. We in the year and 2 years now, that really year and a half that we've had the new guidelines. They've approved, or not approved, but ruled on like a dozen different Marian apparitions.
So do we have to believe what the church says about these things? Like if the church says, hey, this is supernatural, am I now bound to say it?
Okay.
To believe it?
Well, so I guess I'll answer that question in this way. The church never engages its infallibility in these matters. So there's always the potential to disagree, even if the church has said this is definitely not supernatural. That's not an infallible ruling, but you're taking your soul in your hands, because the church usually has extremely good reasons, like this thing teaches heresy. For declaring it non-supernatural, and you're really being reckless if you disagree. But hypothetically, for sufficiently strong reasons, one could do that. However, even when the church does approve something, and even when the church has approved it as established as supernatural, or when the church did do that in the past, you weren't required to agree. The church, as then Cardinal Ratzinger, later Benedict XVI, clarified, the church is certifying that the message is okay and there's significant reasons to believe it comes from God, but it's a matter of human faith rather than divine faith. So we've got credible reasons to think it's supernatural, but that doesn't mean this is absolutely guaranteed to be the case. So people are still free to disagree, and it imposes no obligation on the general faithful.
All right, so we're about to get into your classifications, and you're going to kind of rank these for us and also tell us where they fit in a modified scale, like the scale the church uses. What if people disagree with you, Jimmy Akin?
That's totally fine. I'm not exercising my infallibility either.
Okay.
So
I always want to ask, Jimmy, are you currently exercising your infallibility power?
Yeah, no, these are just my opinions, and other people may disagree with them. They may rank some of these higher than I do. They may rank some of these lower than I do, and that's okay. I'm just offering my opinions based on my investigations for what they're worth. We'll mention what episodes of Mysterious World I look at them in, so you can hear my analysis at greater depth if you're interested. But I have zero problem with people disagreeing with me. I've even changed my own mind on some of these over time. But I would only ask that people, look upon me as charitably as I'm trying to look upon others who have different views.
All right. So Jimmy Akin, I hope I'm not over promising here. He's going to go through all 5,000 claimed apparitions.
No.
Wait, maybe I didn't listen carefully. I might have not been listening carefully.
We're going to be looking at like 7.
All right. Ranking Marian apparitions. We'll come back and do that right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catch Catholic Answers Live anytime at Catholic.com.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Check out EWTN's official YouTube channel. Just follow the link on our homepage at EWTN.com or go to YouTube.com/EWTN.
Watch EWTN's live shows or today's homily from the Daily Mass.
Click the upload button to see our most recent clips.
You can also find all of EWTN YouTube content by clicking the playlist button.
It's all on the official EWTN YouTube channel at YouTube.com/EWTN. Visit today.
Welcome back and Happy New Year here at Catholic Answers Live. The year is off to a good start because we got Jimmy Akin with us, and that's always a good way to start whatever you're doing. And not only that, Jimmy Akin investigating one of the, I thought, at least to my mind, one of the fun mysteries to investigate. He investigates all kinds of mysteries over at Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Today, the mysteries of apparitions. And we're not, as Jimmy said in the first segment, 5,000 of these have been reported. So we're not going to get to all 5,000, but some that are better known, we'll rank them. Jimmy's going to rank from, would it be fair to say from
the worst?
From worst to best. From worst to best.
Well, yeah.
All right.
These aren't, I'm not saying this first one is the worst in Catholic history, but it's the worst of the ones I've investigated that we're talking about here.
I have to say, this is not one I know a lot about, but as much as I know most what I know about it from having heard you speak about it from time to time. Father Michel Rodrigue, or Rodrigue. Is that
Rodrigue.
Rodrigue is how it's pronounced. What happened? What are the facts around this one?
Okay, so this is a set of apparitions reported by a French-Canadian priest named Father Michel Rodrigue, and he was he's a native French speaker. He was incarnated in the Diocese of Hearst-Mousonnet, Ontario, but he didn't stay in that diocese. Now, for people who may not be aware, a diocese of incarnation is like where you are officially as a priest, so to speak, a citizen of. This is like the ultimate diocese you report to. Your bishop ultimately is the one where you're incarnated. And sometimes priests will need to de-incarnate in one diocese and reincarnate in another, which is kind of like transferring your priestly citizenship. But a lot of times priests don't reincarnate when they shift dioceses. They're just serving elsewhere. So Father Rodrigue is incarnated in Hearst-Mousonnet, but he later served in Montreal, and then he began to serve in the Diocese of Amos, which is also in Canada. And there he started like a school for priests and a fraternity of priests. He also did parish work there. And in 2017, so, basically 8 years ago, he started giving retreats in the United States, and he started doing a lot more of these in 2019. Late in 2019, he did a series of lectures in California that were videotaped and put on YouTube, and they started racking up large numbers of views. They some of them had over 1 million views per video, and the reason for that was he relayed some very alarming messages in them. Now, many of his private revelations, he says, come from God the Father. Others come from angels like Gabriel and Michael. He also claims at least one from the Virgin Mary, which is why he's on this list. But he sketched out a really dramatic scenario. According to him, we are in the last times, and that's not a particularly surprising claim, but he asserted that Mary, so this is his Marian claim, that the Virgin Mary designated him, Father Michel Rodrigue, as the apostle of the last times. So it's like not anybody else. He's the apostle of the last times. And he then announced this very dramatic scenario. Among the other and as soon as I start describing this, well, I'll describe it in general terms first. Basically, he believes that there's going to be a major event that some others have talked about called the Warning, where God, for like 15 minutes, gives everybody an insight into their spiritual state before God. So you see, like, if I died right now, would I go to heaven, hell, purgatory? How bad would it be? How good would it be? That kind of stuff. And this would bring about a wave of conversions in the aftermath of this. He also claims that that very shortly, the the Antichrist will come to power, and the Antichrist, in his view, as he was articulating it, is not a political leader, which is the normal way that the Antichrist has been understood in Christian history. Instead, he claimed that a false pope would be elected who would be the Antichrist, and that there would also be a nuclear war, and 7 nuclear missiles would be allowed to strike the United States. So those are some of the during the time of the Antichrist, people will be led to what he calls refuges. A refuge is, in his view, is a place where Christians who are otherwise going to be persecuted can go for safety. And for something to count as a refuge, it's a space. It could be your apartment, could be a house, could be a farm, but it has to have had a special prayer said over it by a priest designating it as a refuge. And all kinds of fancy stuff's going to happen with the refuges, like when you're going to be guided to the refuges by your guardian angel, and you'll get to see your guardian angel. And while you're in the refuge, there are going to be miracles where people have communication between the refuges and seemingly transport between the refuges. And food is going to, you're not going to run out of food. It's going to be miraculously supplied and all this kind of stuff. So all of the things I've just mentioned as part of his scenario are hypothetically possible, but very sketchy. However, and so you can see, given these dramatic claims, why in 2020, after his 2019 lectures, I started getting contacted by people who were really scared and wondering, is all this about to happen? Because he indicated this is all going to start happening in October of 2020. And certainly by the end of the year in 2020.
What a year to be.
And yeah,
I know. We already had some problems that year.
COVID wasn't enough. Yeah. So people were really scared about this, and they asked me to investigate, and I did. And I did an episode of Mysterious World on it. It's episode 123, if you want to check it out. But I concluded in my episode that his prophecies are not credible. And there are a few reasons for that. One of them is some of the prophecies are, well, I'll tell you the 2026 perspective now. His prophecies failed to materialize. Not only did his scenario not start happening at the end of 2020, but he made specific prophecies like Pope Francis is going to be assassinated. And then former Pope Benedict is going to call an ecumenical council and stuff like this. And it's like I said at the time, just watch. In the next few years, regrettably, the way of all flesh is going to happen with Pope Benedict, who was elderly at the time, and that's going to invalidate this prophecy. Well, it did.
Yep.
Pope Benedict passed on to his reward. Also, it was never credible that he would call an ecumenical council after the assassination of Pope Francis, because canon law specifies only the Pope can call an ecumenical council. A Pope Emeritus cannot do that. And no one would call an ecumenical council when there's a vacancy of the papal see. Yeah. So this was just never believable. And then since then, Pope Francis has also passed on to his reward. So we just have multiple failures of these prophecies. As I was preparing the episode on Father Rodrigue, both of his bishops, both the diocese he was incarnated in, Hurst-Mousonnet, and the diocese he was then active in, the Diocese of Amos, they both issued condemnations of what he was doing. And so I included that in the episode itself. But there were other reasons for me rejecting what he had to say. He made lots of claims, even about his own life history, that were simply not credible. For example, and we'll cover some more of these after the break that's coming up. But he claimed events in his childhood and in his multiple ones in his adulthood that simply there's if these things had happened, which were super amazing to begin with, there would be records of these things happening, and there just weren't. And I'll tell you about those on the other side of the break.
It's a Marian feast today, so we're talking about Mary, specifically Marian Apparitions. Jimmy Akin's here with us to rank them. We'll continue ranking apparitions or possible apparitions right after this on Catholic Answers Live. We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Throughout history, some Catholics have been among the worst kind of villains, right? Or were they? In Cancelled, historian Steve Weidenkopf digs into the lives and controversies of some of these Catholics whose reputations have been blackened, often unfairly. He takes on the anti-Catholic versions of history and defends not only these figures, but the faith they represent. Order your copy of Cancelled today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore. A little bit of Happy New Year groovy music. Thanks, Darren. I forgot that we'd be getting groovy music today. Jimmy Akin, our guest. It's the Feast of Mary, the Mother of God, and we're doing a little Marian thing with Jimmy, actually tackling some Marian mysteries. Each apparition or claimed apparition of Mary is a mystery, and a mystery to maybe not so much be solved, but certainly be categorized and interpreted and all that. So we're right now on the claims of Father Michel Rodrigue, the Canadian priest, who has, among other things, claimed Marian apparitions. And I got to say, Jimmy, it's not sounding good for these thus far.
No, and one of the things that I realized was a sign of we can't trust this guy's apparitions, apart from just the bizarre nature of them, is I can't even trust this guy to tell us his own life story straight.
Yeah.
Because he made multiple claims. I'll give you just a few of them. But for example, he claims that he comes from a family with 23 children and he's the youngest, and that after his father died when he was 10, the devil began to infest their house. So they called a priest to exorcise the house. The priest came, or at least bless it. The priest came over, and the devil let out an incredible roar and scared the priest away. And then they called in the bishop. And the bishop, the devil roared again, and the bishop said, I can't do it, and went away yelping. So then they decide the only thing for us to do as a family is burn down our house. And so they made holes in the floors of their house. They made holes in the floors of their house, poured gasoline in each of the
good
holes.
Lord.
And then, as a 10-year-old child, even though they had 22 other older siblings and a mom, they let the little Michel Rodrigue be the one to set the match to the gasoline in the house.
That makes sense. I see that. Yeah.
And so he tried to light it. It didn't work. He tried to light it again. It didn't work. So he prayed to Mary, and then it lit. And the house, the fire goes whoosh, and the windows shatter, and everything's going crazy in the house. And he runs out the front door through the flames, and 2 hands of fire reach out to grab him as he's running out the front door of the house. But his saintly mother praised the Virgin Mary, and the hands of the fiery devil recede back into the house. And then they move to a new town. It's
very exciting.
Cinematic is the word that occurs to me.
Yeah.
And it's just completely not credible.
Yeah.
That any of this happened. This is just ridiculous. He also claims that as a priest, he was at the Church of St. Michael in Montreal doing a Christmas Eve Mass. And while he's there, a woman suffers cardiac arrest and dies. And there are several doctors who were there who are trying to help her, but they can't. And they tell Father Michel that she's died, and he says, no, this cannot be. And so he's going to raise her from the dead. And he puts his hands on her chest, which he then jokes about and says, hey, she was dead. It's okay. And commands her to live, and she hops up and is hopping up and down. Oh, I never felt so good. I never felt so good. I'm so well. I'm so well. I'm so well. And he says, no, you need to go to the hospital. Okay, first piece of sound advice I've heard. But
yes. If you've recently been dead, go to the hospital. That is good advice. Yes.
Yeah. He says, you're going to go to the hospital. They'll check you out, and then you'll come back and I'll give you communion. Oh. So she goes off he continues with Mass. She goes off to the hospital. Then she comes back, and this historical door at the church that he thinks may not have opened in 70 years opens by itself. She comes in at the end of the communion line, and he gives her communion, and everybody applauds.
Wow.
Now, 2 questions. If someone had suffered cardiac arrest and had their heart restarted at a Mass, and then been sent to the hospital, even by ambulance, how long do you think they're going to keep that person in the hospital for tests and observations?
I think usually through about the length of a Eucharistic prayer. I would say usually 7 or 8 minutes. You're right back there in the church, Jimmy. Am I wrong? Am I wrong about that?
I think it'd be a little longer than
okay,
that.
I'm not good with time.
So that's another reason this is implausible.
Yeah.
And a second question is, if you saw all this happen in front of you in a church on Christmas Eve with who knows, and this is a cathedral in a major city with who knows how many hundreds or thousands of people present, do you think any of them might have
reported
taken pictures and put it on their Facebook page, or mentioned it on social media, or maybe it got written up in the diocesan newspaper? Yeah. And yet there are no records of this.
Yeah.
One last story like this. He claims that when he was in Banff, which is in Western Canada, that he was at a gathering at a restaurant and eating a salad, and began to feel pain in his feet, which he interpreted as a heart attack. So he gets up by himself, walks across the street, which is very hard for him to do. In the hospital, he's treated by a Russian doctor who announces that what Father Rodrigue has is a Russian bioweapon that the doctor himself had developed years earlier and then destroyed before he left Russia. So he gives Father Rodrigue a bunch of antitoxin, and then has him by himself drive several days back to the east of Canada for further treatment, where it's confirmed that that what he had experienced was a Russian bioweapon. And okay, now think about it, Si. In the town where you live,
Yeah.
if it was publicly known that a Russian bioweapon had become loose and was infecting restaurant patrons,
Yeah.
do you think that would make the news?
They'd probably send me to drive across Canada. I think that's probably the thing. They'd be like, yeah, you look
Yeah.
better. Drive across Canada.
Yeah. So as a result of these and many other factors that I discuss in the episode, I have no confidence in saying this is absolutely not a supernatural revelation. And anyone who believes this guy is acting irrationally given his history.
Tell you what, we got to take a very quick break, but if you go to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, episode 123 is the one to check out, also 122. I think Jimmy mentioned that, but I thought I'd say it before we take the break. Right back, we'll see if we can find any more credible Marian apparitions right after this with Jimmy Akin.
Catholic Answers Live with Jimmy Akin is coming right back.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
He was a Jesuit, a cardinal, and a doctor of the Church.
Matthew Bunsen and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Robert Bellarmine is honored for his immense contributions to theology, including helping to draft 2 important catechisms that defended church teachings during the Protestant Revolt. Pope Clement VIII named Bellarmine a cardinal because, as the Pope put it, Bellarmine had not his equal for learning.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
All right, we're not working through all 5,000 claimed Marian apparitions, but we're working through a whole bunch of them and working from least credible to most credible, according to Jimmy Akin, who spends a good part of his time investigating these things. So now we leave Father Michel Rodrigue and we go to La Salette. And I have to admit, Jimmy, another one I am not super familiar with. So tell me about La Salette.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so La Salette is a place in France, and it was the site of a reported Marian apparition in 1846, where two children who were tending farm animals, Maximin Girard and Melanie Calvat, encountered a woman who encountered the Virgin Mary. That's what was reported. And she gave them spiritual messages like people need to stop blaspheming, they need to stop working on Sunday, they need to pray and do penance, stuff like that. Also, she gave each of the 2 children a secret. And they wrote down these secrets, and they eventually were sent to Rome and kept in an archive. And for many years, they were not known. Now, there also were, reportedly, one of the things that the apparition told them was that there could be a famine in France, and there was. Also, there were reported healings, at least one of which was verified by bishop. And so this apparition actually got approved. It was approved in, like, I want to say 1850, something like that. 1851. And my tendency when I'm investigating an apparition is to start with whatever judgment the church has made. if the church has made one, and use that as kind of my starting position and say, is there reason to modify this? So my starting position on La Salette was, well, it's been approved by the local bishop, and so I assumed it was accurate, that it was genuinely supernatural. But and in looking into the case further, there is, approving it may have been the right decision in 1851, but we know more now than we did then. Now, even back when the apparition was approved, there were charges that this was a hoax, not one perpetrated by the children, but it was claimed that the Virgin Mary that appeared was really a local woman named Constance Lemerlier. And so it was a hoax perpetrated on the children, was the claim.
Okay.
Now, I haven't been able to get good evidence regarding that charge. So I assume the local bishop looked into it and said, no, it doesn't look like that happened. In light of what we know now, though, I have to wonder, could that be the real explanation? There are several reasons that could not have been known in 1851 that are reasons for suspicion here. One of them is the subsequent life of the children, because among the criteria that the church uses when evaluating an apparition is, is the visionary able to reintegrate into a normal life, a normal, healthy spiritual life, and do they display docility to church authorities?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the boy, Maximin, had a pretty varied career. He didn't stick with any one occupation too long. Melanie became either a sister or a nun, and she was not stable in the religious life. She went through multiple different religious institutes, and I believe ended up just living as a laywoman in a town where a lot of people didn't know her. But she repeatedly clashed with bishops and so forth. So those were not good signs. They could not have been known, though, when the apparition was approved. But for me, what really cinches this one, as I personally can't regard it as supernatural, is we now know what the secrets are. Because in 1999, a scholar dug them out of the archive at the Vatican. And so both secrets are public. I read the entirety of them in the Mysterious World episode on this. One of the things that had happened during Melanie's later career was she published a version of the secret in like a booklet. But she added material. This was longer than what she had written as a child, so it was clear she was adding new material to the secret. And this secret is actually, this apparition is actually fondly looked on in some traditionalist circles, because one of the things in the expanded version of her secret that she included was Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. And so there are certain traditionalists who really like that statement and want to say, see, heaven predicted exactly what we're going through now. Rome has lost the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist, or, we're almost there, or something like that. But that's in the later version of her secret. And the later version that she released, the Vatican actually had it put on the Index of Forbidden Books. So all of these are big warning signs about this. But after 1990, and that was back when the Index of Forbidden Books still existed. But now that we have the actual texts of the secrets, we can look at them and say, well, what do they say? Do they make any predictions, and have the predictions been fulfilled? Well, one of the things in Maximin's prophecy said was that a great country in the north of Europe that is Protestant, so that we're talking probably, if it's a great country and it's Protestant and it's in Northern Europe, it's probably either Germany or England. Those are the two great Protestant countries in Northern Europe, will convert to Catholicism and lead to the conversion of, quote, all the other nations in the world. Now, I think it'd be great if a country in Northern Europe that was Protestant became Catholic and led to the conversion of all the other countries in the world. That would be awesome. But Maximin had a date on this prophecy. He said it could be a little bit earlier or a little bit later, depending on human freedom, but it will definitely happen by the year 2000 at the latest. So, Salette, have all the nations of the world led by a formerly Protestant country in Northern Europe been converted to the Catholic faith by the year 2000?
It did not happen. That
did not happen. Yeah. So Maximin's secret isn't looking good. Then when we look at Melanie's original secret, she says that Paris and Marseille, the two of the major cities in France, are going to be destroyed. There is going to be a great famine, and there's going to be a great king in France. Now, this is post-French Revolution. There was briefly a minor king in France after the Napoleonic Wars, but she's saying no. After this, there's going to be a great king in France, and religion is going to spread all over the world, and the Antichrist will be born of a religious sister. Okay, wow. Now again, all those things hypothetically could happen, and some of them would be good, like religion spreading all over the world. But Melanie said all of this will happen within 100 years. So that puts a deadline of 1946 for all this to happen. And none of that stuff happened. So both of the secrets contained easily falsified predictions. Now, they had no way of knowing this in 1851, but now that we're in 2025, we can look back and say, yeah, these secrets didn't pan out. And so I would say, yeah, they're not of supernatural origin. And so consequently, even though this apparition actually has church approval, and that's never been retracted, I would say a careful investigation of the evidence indicates that La Salette should not be regarded as supernatural. And we talk about that one in episode 60 of Mysterious World.
That is fascinating. That's very, very interesting. All right, we've done two. We continue on, and we're up to one that I am familiar with. And you've got a few minutes before we have to take the break, but we can continue.
We can at least start it, yeah.
Okay, so Medjugorje.
Okay. Let's talk about Medjugorje.
Yes. So what happened? What are the basic facts of what happened at Medjugorje?
Okay, so in 1981, a group of 6 teenagers, although technically one of them was 10 at the time, a group of 6 teenagers in what was then Yugoslavia, but today is Bosnia-Herzegovina, began to report apparitions of the Virgin Mary. They first reported seeing her outdoors on a local hill that's known as Mount Podberdo, or Apparition Mountain, or Apparition Hill. And they eventually began seeing her in a local church, and later just wherever they are. The core message, as is typical for Marian apparitions, is one of repentance and prayer and peace and things like that. Reportedly, Mary gave the children a series of 10 secrets each, which at least substantially overlap with each other. It's not like we've got 100 different secrets. But she gave them a series of 10 secrets each with dates for when they're supposed to be fulfilled. And once a child learned their 10th secret, they stopped having regular apparitions of the Virgin Mary, although she would continue to appear to them like once a year.
Okay.
Or at least on a less frequent basis than not every day. And 3 of the 6 visionaries claim to know all 10 secrets at this point. Now, they're all adults now, but 3 of them claim to know all 10 secrets and no longer have regular experiences or frequent experiences. The other 3 know, I believe, 9 of the 10, and they claim to still be having daily apparitions of the Virgin Mary. And they go to conferences and things like that, and people watch them having their apparition. So that's a kind of general, and as a result of, 1981 to 2026, that's 45 years. And in 45 years, with daily apparitions going on, we're talking a vast number of reported messages.
Yeah.
In addition to the secrets, this is very unusual in terms of the volume of messages that have been reported. People have also reported various miracles like healings. They've reported seeing the chains in their rosaries become golden colored. Some of them report going to Medjugorje and looking at the sun and seeing it act in strange ways, kind of like the miracle of the sun at Fatima, which we'll talk about later. And in 2024, the Vatican actually issued finally a ruling on Medjugorje. There had been different rulings that had been issued by the local bishop, and more than one bishop over time, and by the local bishops' conference. In the reign of Pope Benedict, he started a commission to look into the subject because there's a lot of pressure on, Medjugorje has been a huge phenomenon. And, according to current estimates, 50 million pilgrims have gone there in the last 46 years. And so this has been a huge phenomenon. There was lots of pressure for a ruling on it. It was begun, the Vatican investigation of it was begun during the reign of Pope Benedict and was completed in the reign of Pope Francis. And then after they issued the new criteria for how to evaluate Marian apparitions, they did issue a ruling on it. But I know we're getting up to the end of the hour,
man.
So we'll tell you what the ruling was and also my analysis once we get to the other side of the break.
All right, and I'm glad that the tease comes with Medjugorje because this is most of these are not really in our lifetime, or they predate us, and in one way or another. Actually, I don't know if you know this, but most of history predates us, Jimmy. So that's not unusual.
I was aware of that,
but
unless you have a time machine.
This one has been a preoccupation of the church for decades. So we'll find out what the ruling. The 2024 ruling was regarding this purported apparition in Medjugorje, and then we'll go on with more. We've covered a couple. We've got at least 4 more to go after this, if my count is correct. So we're working with Jimmy on this Marian feast day, this feast where we celebrate Mary, the Mother of God. We're working through some Marian apparitions and saying which are least convincing, which are least impressive, and which are most. We're going from worst to best. We'll continue to work our way through Medjugorje and then others right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Happy New Year again. Hey, it's a day off in most places, and maybe you're just catching us for the first time. If you want to know more about us, what we do here at Catholic Answers, you can go to Catholic.com and find out all about what we do. You'll certainly find lots of writing from our guest this hour, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, Jimmy Akin. And what a great way to spend New Year's Day, the feast of the Mother of God, Mary, the Mother of God, talking about Mary. And sometimes she shows up, but not every time somebody says she showed up, did she show up. So we're asking Jimmy to walk us through a series of apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary and say, yes or no. Does this one seem likely or not likely? And we're mid-pack right now with Medjugorje. And Jimmy gave us an excellent first of the year tease out of the first hour. He said he'll let us know what the Vatican ruled about the events at Medjugorje in the year 2024. So, Jimmy, thank you for being back for another hour. It would be horrific if you just walked off and didn't come back after that tease. What was the ruling on Medjugorje?
Yeah, so we'll get what the Vatican ruled on the table right here at the beginning, and then I'll tell you my own analysis.
Okay.
Now, remember, the Vatican issued its ruling after the new norms, and that came out in 2024. And the new norms are not focused on is this supernatural or not. They're focused on can people safely have a devotion to this. And only the Pope can authorize a look at the question of, is it of supernatural origin? And that has not happened with Medjugorje. So saying, can people have a healthy devotion in connection with Medjugorje? The answer was yes, provided you keep certain clarifications in mind. The Holy See issued a big document on this, and they said in it that the messages coming from Medjugorje are fundamentally orthodox. There are some statements in them that could be taken in a way that's false, but most of those are corrected for by other messages. It's like you read, it's like if I'll give an example from the Gospels. At one point in the Gospels, a person comes up to Jesus and says, "Good teacher," and Jesus says, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God." And if that's all you knew about if you take that statement in isolation, it could sound like Jesus is denying that he's God. But when you read the totality of the New Testament, it makes it, and the totality of Jesus' own teachings, it makes it clear he knows he's God. And so he's not denying he's God in this passage. He's inviting the person to go further than just recognizing him as good. So when you read a statement in context of other statements, it can affect how you understand it. Yeah. And so the DDF, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, made the point that there are statements that taken in isolation for Medjugorje can have an unorthodox sense, but when you read them as a totality, a lot of them get corrected. Still, the DDF noted that there can be human elements in what apparition receivers say. They may perceive things as having been revealed to them that God may not have actually revealed. It may be drawn on the seer's own beliefs or consciousness or things like that, or they may not have found the right words to express it, because messages from apparitions are not divinely inspired the way Scripture is. So they're more in Scripture itself as a human element, but these documents have even more of a human element, and they should not be treated like gospels. And so the Holy See said, with certain categories of messages, you don't want to take a lot of weight, put a lot of weight on them. You want to set some of them aside. This is due to the seer. This is not something Mary was really saying. But overall, the message is orthodox and spiritually wholesome. And so they gave it a nihil obstat, meaning nothing obstructs the faithful from having a healthy devotion here, provided that people keep certain clarifications in mind. So that's the ruling the Vatican came to.
Okay.
And I don't have any problem with that. I had stayed deliberately neutral for years on Medjugorje. I was neither a Medjugorje opponent nor a Medjugorje supporter. Since the Holy See hadn't ruled and I wasn't then a paranormal investigator, my default was just wait till the church decides on something and then take a look at it. So I had not even really looked in any detail at Medjugorje. I knew, some things about it, but it had not been a principal area of study for me. When the Vatican issued its ruling, though, I said, okay, now it's time to dig into this. And so I devoted actually 3 episodes of Mysterious World to it. They're episodes 337, 338, and 339. And my analysis is in the last, 339. The first one, episode 337, basically looks at the events of the apparition. 338 looks at the Vatican's ruling, and 339 is my own investigation. So I assume you want to hear about that.
I would like to hear about that. Yes, please, Jimmy. I've been waiting. Yeah.
Okay.
What conclusions do you come to?
Well, since this is in the middle of the list, you can infer that they're kind of mixed. One of the things that the commission Pope Benedict set up did was make a distinction between the very beginning of the apparitions, like in the first 10 days, and everything that's happened subsequently. And there are differences between everything in what I call phase 1 of the apparitions, basically the first 10 days, and everything else, which is phase 2. The children were not influenced by other people during phase 1. And well, first, let me give you what the commission said. So the commission drew this distinction between the 2 phases. And at the time, they were using the old criteria, saying, is this supernatural or not? And a large majority, like 85% of the experts who considered the phase 1 apparition said, yeah, we can rule on these that they're supernatural. And a large majority of the same experts for phase 2 said, we can't rule that these are supernatural. They need further study. So that's what Pope Benedict's commission came to. Now, this was never announced publicly until 2024, when the Vatican had an overall ruling. But because it was used by the old criteria, looking at is this supernatural or not, I think it's a useful starting point for that kind of analysis. And I can see why one could have a positive supernatural ruling for the early apparitions, because there were things that were seen and reported by others who were not just members of the children. Like, for example, at one point, now Yugoslavia was communist at the time, and at one point the communists got the kids in a van and were like driving them around so that they couldn't show up for the appointed apparition. And so they had communist minders who were there in the van with them. And the minders reported, hey, wait, we saw some genuinely weird stuff happening that seemed to be supernatural. And they reportedly ended up quitting their jobs as a result. Also, at another point, now that the kids had been deflected by the authorities from getting to that apparition in time for the next apparition, when the kids saw the communist authorities coming, they skedaddled. And so that the authorities couldn't take them into custody. And they ran to the local church, whose pastor was a man named Father Jozo. And Father Jozo is sitting in his study just doing his thing when all of a sudden he hears a heavenly voice say, "Go outside and help the children." And so he does that. And so in this first phase, it isn't all just the children's word for things. And so I think I tentatively accept the supernaturality of these early Medjugorje apparitions. I could change my mind upon learning more, but I tentatively accept them. I think there is a basis for it, saying they're not just okay spiritually, but also supernatural. One of the things, though, about these early apparitions is Mary predicted that she was going to stop appearing at the end of 10 days. And so how do we explain the last 46 years of apparitions, given this early prediction? That could at least cast doubt on phase 2. Are there other reasons to doubt phase 2? Well, before we get to reasons to doubt, let's consider some of the miracle claims connected with them. I mentioned 3, that some people claim to have been healed. Some people claim like the chains in their rosary become goldish, and some people reported unusual phenomena when they look at the sun. Well, to me, the most impressive of those, given the reports, would be the healings. You know, we do have Marian apparitions with healings that have been medically investigated and judged to be miraculous. That is not the case for Medjugorje. These are healing reports. These are not medically investigated miracles. And if you have 50 million people coming to a site hoping that God is going to heal them, some of them are going to come away reporting that they've been healed. Mm-hmm. You know, the placebo effect will do that. Others could be spontaneous remissions. Others could be genuine cases where God did miraculously heal a person, but just because he loves the person. Could be nothing to do with Medjugorje. Just here's a person who needs healing. They're praying to me, and I'm going to heal them. So what we need are verified miraculous healings connected directly to the apparitions, and we don't have that in phase 2. They're also with the like chains on the rosaries. You know, those chains are frequently plated metal, and the salts and acid in our sweat, and also just the friction of the rosary beads running together, can cause that to decay. And my understanding is that there have been looks at the metal that said, yeah, this is an ionizing process. But what we don't have are studies showing, oh no, this is real gold, you know, element 79. We don't have anything like that. And we do have alternative ways of explaining it where, you know, either a good chunk of it came off suddenly, or you hadn't really paid attention to the chains in your rosary for a while, and then you go to Medjugorje and you suddenly notice it. When we talk about the solar phenomena at Medjugorje, a lot of people look up at the sun hoping to see it. And when you look up at the sun hoping to see something, just the brightness of the sun and the way the human eye can react to that, in fact, it's dangerous to look directly at the sun, can produce phenomena. And if this were natural, you would expect individual small groups of people, a single person or small groups of people who are all staring at the sun together to report it, but you wouldn't expect a mass event. And that's what we have. You'd also expect it to happen on demand rather than all at once for a whole huge number of people. And that's what we have here. We have individual and small group reports of weird stuff happening with the sun basically on demand as people are looking at it in Medjugorje. So we don't have good miraculous evidence here. There are alternative natural explanations. But there are other reasons. Now, those are not reasons to be skeptical. Those are just saying we don't have support for a bunch of miracles. We do have support for people having spiritual fruit. You know, they get vocations, they have conversions, they go back to the sacraments, lots of stuff happens. It's spiritually good at Medjugorje. But that doesn't prove it's a miracle, because people can have spiritually good things happening simply because they're reaching out to God.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you think about it, well, one may not spring to your mind right off the bat, but can you think of any other pilgrimages, non-Christian? Let's keep it out of the Christian church. Any other pilgrimages that occur regularly with millions of people that you can think of?
The Hajj?
The Hajj, yeah. And guess what? When Muslims go to Mecca for the Hajj, which has about the same number of pilgrims as Medjugorje, they come back reporting, oh, I'm spiritually transformed and God really touched me and things like that. In fact, there have been sociological studies of people who have been to the Hajj, they're known as Haji, versus people who have not been to the Hajj in the Muslim community, and there is a qualitative difference. And so when people are looking forward to a spiritual experience, and you've got millions of them, and when they're reaching out to God and praying to God, well, he's going to touch some of them. And so this doesn't prove that Muslim apparitions are miraculous. And in the same way, it doesn't prove that this Marian apparition is miraculous. But there are reasons to doubt it. Among them are, and I'll cut this short because, like I said, I have 3 whole episodes on this, but I'll cut this short just because we need to make progress in what we're looking at. But the secrets. The seers predicted that these secrets, back in the 1980s, in early phase 2, they predicted these secrets would start happening soon. And it's been 46 years, and none of them have materialized. But the seers claim that one of them has a parchment, and these are, all 10 of the secrets are written with the dates they're supposed to occur on the parchment so that they don't get forgotten. And reportedly, this parchment has been shown to a couple of people, and they saw different things on it. Like one of them saw what looked like a letter, like a letter you would write to someone on it. Another saw something like a poem or something like that. But nobody is able to read what's on the parchment, and everybody sees something different. And this parchment is supposedly can be crumpled up and rolled up, but not torn. And it's not like any other material on earth. It's something that Mary gave to this seer from heaven. So it's not like they themselves wrote down. No, this is something from a physical object from heaven. Okay, let's see it. Let's do tests on it. Let's see, is it really an unknown material that can be crumpled but not torn? Let's take photographs of it. Let's have different people look at it. Do they see different things on it? If we don't buy the Joseph Smith and the golden plates because we can't look at the golden plates, if there's reason for suspicion there's reason for suspicion here. As I often say, this sounds like I've got something really supernatural, but I can't show it to you. It sounds like Sherlock Holmes in the case of the missing evidence.
Yeah.
It's not credible. And we have other problems, but I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah,
So I would say part 1 of the miracles I tentatively accept as supernatural, but it looks like things went in a non-supernatural direction in part 2.
All right, more to come, and we said we're moving our way towards the more credible. So what are the more credible and most credible apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary? With Jimmy Akin right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at Magnificat.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
We should pray because prayer is conversation with God, and conversation is the only way to build a relationship. We need that relationship with God. We should pray and talk with God about what's on our hearts, what's on our minds, what's active in our lives, the joys we have. We should share all of these with God. Prayer is conversation, and conversation is the only way to build a relationship with God. It's the most important relationship. All of our other relationships depend on this one.
Working our way with Jimmy Akin through Marian Apparitions today, and we're getting more credible as we go. We started with some that are not credible at all, and moving our way up, and we'll see who's the winner. I don't know if the winner is the right way to say it, but who Jimmy chose as the most credible Marian apparition. Now, Jimmy, I want to ask you about Kibeho. You did two episodes of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World on Kibeho. What happened there, and what are the basic facts of this one?
Okay, so in 1981, at a girls' school in Kibeho, Rwanda, a trio of 3 girls began to report Marian apparitions, and they didn't all report it at the same time. First it was one girl, then she was joined by a second, and then she was joined by a third. They had, usual calls for peace and prayer and repentance and stuff like that. And one of the things that the Virgin Mary predicted in these apparitions was that if people don't repent, there could be some really horrific stuff happening. The girls reported being shown people killing each other, like chopping each other up with machetes. They reported seeing rivers of blood and stacks of human skulls and things like that. And that then happened in the Rwandan genocide in 1994. Eventually, the apparition was approved in 2001 as being supernatural, and I think that there are reasons for viewing it that way. And unlike Medjugorje, where there's kind of these two phases, here we've only got one, and there are credible reasons for viewing it as supernatural. One of the reasons is the natural explanations don't tend to explain everything. This could not have been innocent imagination on the parts of the girls, because they did things like go into trances where people pulled their hair and, actually shoved needles under their fingernails and stuff. And that people can fake trances, but they can't fake them innocently. So this couldn't be innocent imagination. It would have to be fraud in that case. But we don't have good evidence for fraud in this case, in part because these girls, prior to the apparitions, didn't all get along. The first girl, Alphonsine, was known as a poor student. The second girl, named Nathalie, was known as one of the best students and most pious girls in the school. So why, if a poor student is reporting apparitions and some people are accusing her of witchcraft and voodoo, which they were, why, if you're one of the best students in the school, are you going to put yourself out for this person?
Yeah.
It's going to damage your reputation. And then the third girl, Marie Claire, who was one of the accusers of voodoo, she had persecuted the first 2 girls and said this is all witchcraft. And then she has the revelation too. So she has this kind of St. Paul-like moment and flips and becomes a supporter. So this is not a plausible group for deliberate fraud. They don't have prior associations. They're not friends, and they even had hostilities. So the natural explanations don't look that great. The But there are signs that could be supernatural here. One of them is preternatural knowledge of the genocide, which happened, just a few years later. Now, that's not proof, because they could have sensed, hostilities in between the Tutsis and the Hutu, who were the two major groups in the area, and extrapolated one day a genocide might happen. So that's not proof. There's also Marie Claire, the third girl, seems to have had preter knowledge of a devotion going back to the 1300s called the Seven Sorrows Rosary, which was basically unknown in Rwanda at the time. And so there are reasons that point in the direction of supernaturality. It's not 100%, but it does point in that direction.
That's one to check out those episodes on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, 192 and 193. But even more coming up right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Have you ever wondered about the mysterious, even obscure aspects of the Catholic faith? Dive into the Jimmy Akin podcast, where Jimmy brings together information from many fields as he pushes the boundaries of apologetics. Tune in today to the Jimmy Akin podcast, Mysteries of the Faith, a highly entertaining, informative, and at times humorous show that will help you grow in your faith. Visit JimmyAkinPodcast.com today to subscribe.
Lots of people have big questions about Catholicism. It needs a big book of answers. And now it's got one. The Big Book of Catholic Answers is filled with helpful replies to more than 250 questions about the faith. Questions about God, salvation history, the Creed, the Bible, the list goes on and on. Order your copy of the Big Book of Catholic Answers today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun. And that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, of morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin with us here. And if you've been with us since the beginning, we've gone through several apparitions of increasing, what should I say?
Evidence.
Yeah,
of supernaturality.
Right. Yeah. And so now we're getting into the really exciting territory. Find out what Jimmy thinks of. Well, we'll do Akita next, but we're going to get to Fatima. And even Fatima is not even the number one. I was amazed. So hang on. We're getting close to number one. But tell us about Akita. What happened there? What's the story around Akita?
Okay, so in Akita, Japan, in 1973, a nun, Sister Agnes Sasagawa, who was a convert to Catholicism, began to experience stigmata and apparitions of the Virgin Mary. The apparitions were connected with a statue of Mary that would shed tears. It also had blood and sweat on it. And Sister Sasagawa received messages over a period of time, including that if usual apparition type messages like, repent, do penance, pray the rosary, things like that. And if people don't repent, there will be a huge chastisement that comes upon the world. Fire will fall from the sky, and nations, several nations at least, will be destroyed. And the apparition was eventually approved in 1984, so 11 years after it began, and this is one where I think there is good evidence for supernatural things happening in connection with Akita, but it's not unalloyed. One of the things when you take training as a competent paranormal investigator is that you learn to expect, even when something genuinely paranormal is happening, you also expect some of what's being reported to be natural. To give an example, once people think they have a ghost in their house, every bump in the night, it's that ghost again.
Yes, that makes sense. Right.
So you expect, it's like, okay, we do have evidence for a ghost here, but some of those bumps in the night were just your plumbing system. Another way that natural phenomena get mixed in is when people come in and they want to see the supernatural or paranormal thing happening. And like, if you claim you've got a poltergeist in your house that's, moving stuff around, and someone comes in and say, okay, I want to see what's happening with the poltergeist, the people who live in the house may be pressured to produce the phenomenon on demand. And so they may just, when no one's looking, flick an object so that it moves. And they really have a poltergeist in their house, but they want to satisfy the people who are expecting to see it.
Right.
And so there can be a little bit of cheating mixed in with real phenomenon. So I think something like that is likely the case here. The reason I say that is they did blood typing now they didn't have DNA analysis back in the 1970s, but they did have blood typing, and they did blood type analysis on the tears that the statue was weeping at different times. Now, anytime I hear about a weeping statue, I'm always a little suspicious, because this phenomenon is easy to fake, and it has frequently been faked in history. Mm-hmm. But specifically in the case of the Akita statue, they found 3 different blood types in the tears: B, AB, and O. Now, you could say, oh, this is a wonderful symbol of God miraculously embracing all of humanity by having multiple blood types. Or you could say you've got 3 different Confederates who are getting their own tears and putting them on the statue.
Yeah.
This, and given the already suspicious nature of many statue weeping phenomena are demonstrably false, this looks to me like, even if the statue did supernaturally weep on some occasions, on other occasions it looks like this can be evidence that at least some cheating was going on here. But that doesn't mean dismissing the whole apparition, because there's also evidence pointing in the other direction. For example, Sister Agnes was deaf, and she predicted that she was going, based on what the Virgin Mary told her, she predicted your hearing's going to come back, but it's not going to be permanent. It's going to go away again. And that happened. She was told, and reportedly told the bishop, who had a special relationship with her monastery, this is when it's going to happen. And it did. Her hearing came back. And it didn't last. It lasted for a number of months, but then it went away again. And then she has another announcement that your hearing's going to come back again, and this time it's going to be permanent. And 7 years after the initial apparition, again, her hearing came back, and it was permanent this time. Now, could this be purely natural? Well, okay, could it be spontaneous remission? If it was spontaneous remission of her deafness, it wouldn't be predictable in this way. And she was known to have said what was going to happen before it did, which points to another natural possibility, which would be faking. Could she have hoaxed her own miraculous cure? Now, she clearly could hear afterwards. You talk to her, she talks back, and she clearly heard what you said. That would mean that if this was a hoax, she had to fake being deaf for extended periods of time, like 7 years before the permanent cure. Is it really worth it to hoax being deaf for that long in order to set up a hoax like this? That's not very plausible. But there's another reason why it's implausible, and that is they did hearing tests on her. Now, today, hearing tests are basically impossible to fake. You cannot fake deafness in a modern hearing test. Some of the reasons for that is the technology. Like, they can watch what your brain waves are doing and see, is the part of your brain that processes auditory signals activated by these or by what we're pumping into your ears or not. They also do startle tests where you're, without any warning, they suddenly hit you with a huge, enormous noise and see if you jump or if your galvanic skin response jumps or things like that. So today, it's basically impossible to fake deafness in a hearing test. I don't know whether it was as impossible in the 1970s, but it was still very difficult. For example, they will subject you, they mentioned they turned, with Sister Agnes's hearing test, they turned the device all the way up to its maximum, which was like 90 decibels. 90 decibels is deafeningly loud, and she still couldn't hear it. She didn't respond to it. It's not just her saying, no, I can't hear that. She's not responding when we suddenly hit her with 90 decibels. Given that, and that she would have had to hoax this for years and years, being deaf, and never give herself away when she's in her monastery and there's someone drops a pan behind her in the kitchen and she doesn't react. I think this is credible. Also, it's not just Sister Agnes. There was a Korean woman named Chung who had a brain tumor. It was on the x-rays, and she was healed in connection with prayers to Our Lady of Akita. And the tumor went away. It's like all of a sudden, no more tumor. So I think, even though I think there's some elements of cheating in this with the statue, there are other elements that point to genuine supernaturality here.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to do the top two when we come back. We've been working our way through Marian Apparitions with Jimmy Akin. More of that right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and his gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I told him about the woman who came to me and said her two children hadn't spoken to each other for 2 years. Their grandma died, and she was very wealthy. She left half to each one. She said they're arguing over a commode. She said it's inlaid. Can you imagine being in hell and somebody saying to you, what are you here for?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live on the first day of the year, a year we celebrate Mary under her title Mother of God. She's got a lot of titles, but that's a good one, Mother of God. To celebrate Mary today, we're looking at Marian Apparitions. We just finished Akita. Jimmy covers these or many of them, and all of the ones we have covered today on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, where he looks into both supernatural and natural mysteries. Episode 99 is the one you can go to at Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World to hear his full evaluation of the apparitions, the purported apparitions at Akita in Japan. Now we're going to get to the top two, and we've got about 20 minutes. So one of these is very, very familiar to Catholics, one less familiar. So maybe we'll give a little bit of short shrift to the one that's more familiar. Fatima is covered in episodes 40, 64, and 65 on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Tell us about Fatima, Jimmy.
Yeah, and I was going to suggest, since this one's familiar, I'll go through it pretty quickly. In 1917, between May and October, the Virgin Mary reportedly appeared to 3 children, shepherd children, in Portugal. She gave the children a 3-part secret. The first part of the secret was a vision of hell. The second part of the secret dealt with the end of World War I and the beginning of World War II, and also the nation of Russia. And then the third part of the secret was kept a secret for a long time, but basically it dealt with the persecution of Christians by communist authorities and an assassination attempt on the Pope. It was eventually announced in the year 2000 by John Paul II, who himself had been the victim of an assassination attempt by Mehmet Ali Aka, who was believed to be in the pay of communist authorities, and that happened on the anniversary of Our Lady of Fatima. So, which was
pretty.
Yeah.
When you say that, you almost get chills when you say it. I forgot that it happened on the anniversary. Yeah.
And in fact, he had not. That's what led him to read the third part of the secret, because he had not read it before. And while he's recuperating, he decides, this happened on the apparition of Our Lady of Fatima anniversary. I wonder if there's a connection. So he calls for it and reads it, and is like, wham, papal assassination attempt. So the apparition itself was approved as supernatural in 1930. And at the end of the apparition on October 13th, 1917, you had a crowd of about 70,000 people present to witness the apparition. It had been predicted that there would be heavenly phenomena that would manifest, and thousands of people started seeing the sun spin and do unusual things. And I won't go through it all in detail just for time reasons. But basically, I think there is evidence for the miracle of the sun, as it came to be called, being supernatural, because it was seen by so many people. Not everybody reported seeing it, though, which suggests it could be a subjective phenomenon rather than a objective phenomenon that you could photograph. But it was not limited to Fatima, because other people saw it within like a 25-mile radius who were not expecting it, and they saw it too. So it looks like an event that really happened, but was and affected a very large number of people, even though it didn't affect everybody. Also, for my money, the fact that you've got a papal assassination attempt on the anniversary of Our Lady of Fatima, who predicted a papal assassination attempt, and that's something that there's no way that could have been faked. I think there is strong evidence for Fatima as a supernatural apparition.
If you want to know more, check out episodes 40, 64, and 65 on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Here's what surprised me, that there's one above Fatima on your list. I honestly, when I saw the list you gave me, I was like, really? So tell us about the apparition of Our Lady in Zeitoun. Where's that, and what happened?
Zeitoun is part of the Cairo metropolitan area in Egypt. And in 1968, a group of like 4 Muslim mechanics at a garage across from St. Mary's Coptic Church suddenly noticed there was a light on top of St. Mary's Church that was not normally there. And they then discerned the figure of a woman up there, and they thought she was going to commit suicide. So they thought she was going to jump off the dome of the church. And they were like pleading with her not to jump off. And then people identified her, and she didn't jump, but people identified her as the Virgin Mary. And this manifestation happened like 90 times between 1968 and 1970. And Mary would appear as a glowing figure on top of the church, and she would be surrounded by other light phenomena like oversized doves that did not flap their wings and could vanish suddenly. And crowds of people saw this. It is estimated that that as many as 250,000 people had seen it on a single occasion, and over the course of the apparitions, it's estimated that 1 million people saw it. So this appears to be by far the most witnessed Marian apparition in history. Also, this happened in 1968 and following, and we had cameras by then. So, and people took pictures of the Virgin Mary and the doves and things like that. And so we have pictures of these light phenomena. They were not purely subjective because they could be captured on camera. So this was an objective phenomenon that people were witnessing. Now, are there any natural explanations for it? Well, you might wonder, could this be some kind of a hoax involving lighting? Well, on the very first night, the local sheriff, I believe, thought it might be that, and so he shot out the street lights so they could not contribute to it, and
I
the
like this guy.
phenomenon continued. Yeah, and then a little bit a while later, the Egyptian authorities decided to shut down all of the electrical power in the neighborhood, and yet the light phenomena continued. So it couldn't have been electrical light that was producing this, because they shut off all the source, all the electricity. Could it have been chemical light, like phosphorus, which glows on contact with oxygen? Could, a woman have doused herself in phosphorus, or could she have gotten doves and coated them in phosphorus and then released them? Well, there are some problems with that. One of them, chemical light, like phosphorus, tends to be dimmer, and much dimmer than what these people saw and what showed up on the photographs. But also, there's no way up on that they could have gotten up on the roof of St. Mary's Church, because the windows inside the dome are sealed, and the windows themselves are up several stories. So in order to even reach them, you would have had to use like scaffolding or extra long ladders, and then they're sealed shut.
Yeah.
So there's no way for this woman to appear there. She also reportedly was seen levitating, and she would at times she would step off of the roof and slowly glide down to where the people were and then bless them. And also, with regard to the doves, if you just had phosphorus coated pigeons, they would act like normal pigeons. Some of them would land, and hey, and it would leave traces of phosphorus. None of this happened, and it wouldn't explain the reports of the doves suddenly appearing and suddenly disappearing. So then there were reported healings in connection with these that were then verified by the Coptic authorities. Copts are fellow Christians, they're Egyptian Christians. But loads of people who were Christian and non-Muslim and Jewish and atheist saw these. This was not a believers-only apparition. And it wasn't believers only when it came to the miracles either. You'll remember I mentioned the Muslim mechanics who first spotted the apparition on the first night. Well, while they were thinking this is a woman about to commit suicide, one of them pointed at her as he urged her not to commit suicide. And he pointed at her with a finger that was all bandaged up because it was gangrenous. It had gangrene, and he was scheduled to have that finger amputated the next day.
Whoa.
Well, when he goes in to have his finger amputated, all of a sudden, it's a normal finger again under the bandages. So he had this miraculous healing of his finger that he pointed out the Virgin Mary with. There was another instance, again, documented by a doctor, of a cancer patient. He had previously had surgery for cancer, and in a recent examination, the doctor found another tumor. It was big enough he could feel it under the man's skin. And he said, "You need another operation." The man said, "I can't afford one." So he left. And then he comes back and says, "Can you examine me again? Because I went and prayed to the Virgin Mary and I've been healed." And the doctor felt around and said, "Yeah, the tumor is totally gone." Whoa. There was another guy who had retinal detachment with a blood clot in his right eye. And there was no treatment for this, either in Egypt or internationally. And they said, you've permanently lost your vision in this eye. And so he goes to where the Virgin Mary is appearing at St. Mary's Church, and when the apparition appears, he shouts, "Medicine may have failed, but God will not." And wham, he can see in his right eye again. And there are multiple medical miracles, including ones investigated by doctors, some of whom were not Christian or not even believers, and said, "I have no medical explanation for this, and it's driving me crazy." So this, I think, is ultimately the most documented Marian apparition that we have. I think it provides more evidence for its supernaturality than any of the others that I have investigated thus far, in part because it happened over a period of 3 years in a major metropolitan area. I mean, Cairo is a huge city, and had up to 1 million witnesses, maybe more.
So there's no message with this, though. It's merely an appearance.
No, this one is an appearance, and that's similar to others. We're kind of used to Marian apparitions having messages associated with them, but they don't all. For example, the Irish apparition of Knock had the appearance of the Virgin Mary and several saints, but no messages. So no messages is not atypical. Sometimes there are messages, sometimes there aren't. Now, there were some minor messages not meant for public distribution, but like, "Go to my church, go to my son's church, and you'll be healed." So some of those set up miracles, but that's like a minor personal thing. It's not like a message for the world. However, the message was understood as having a broader message. Egypt had just lost the 6-day war with Israel, which was a profound national humiliation for them. And Christians were starting to be persecuted by the Muslim majority. Christians at the time were about 15% of the Egyptian population, and they were starting to get persecuted. And so then the Virgin Mary appears, and we have this message of reconciliation and peace just by her mere presence that helped heal divisions and stop persecution of Christians.
This is an extraordinary one. You can find it on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. To get the full story, fully unpacked, on episode 283. As a matter of fact, if you haven't listened to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, a great place to start, Zeitoun. I did not know about it before I heard about it from Jimmy, and it's just one of the most extraordinary things of the 20th century. So do check out episode 283. So Jimmy, I assume more, if Mary keeps appearing, you're going to keep investigating. We'll get more of these.
I haven't even finished investigating all the appearances she's made, so this will be an ongoing part of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Jimmy. Thank you very much for doing this with us. It was a lot of fun.
Likewise. Yeah, Happy New Year to you too.
And I feel like we ended on a high. Like, I am so intrigued by Zeitoun. I got to keep looking into that. Check out episode 283. We're going to be back. We'll do this again tomorrow. We're going to talk about the holy name of Jesus tomorrow, because The celebration of the Holy Name of Jesus is on the 3rd, so 2 days. So we'll cover it tomorrow. And you might be saying, the Holy Name of Jesus, they have a whole feast day for the Holy Name of Jesus? You won't believe how many references there are to the name or the name of Jesus in the New Testament. It's unbelievable. We'll get to that tomorrow, and we'll see you then, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.